Good afternoon. I'm Lisa Ryan Howard, Senior Vice President and General Manager of Media at the New York Times. Thank you for joining the 15th Annual New York Times Travel Show and for participating in the Travel Industry Conference. This year is an especially poignant one as we commemorate our 15th year as the largest travel industry trade and consumer travel show in North America. Since 2003, over 375,000 people have attended the New York Times Travel Show to learn the latest news in travel. Every year, we see many changes and improvements in the travel industry due to advancements in technology and especially online with social media. Today, we're delighted to bring together 4 travel industry leaders to share their views on what the future holds for the travel industry and how they are preparing for it. Their companies have combined annual revenues of approximately $55 billion, with over 300,000 employees engaged in helping tens of millions of travelers relax and enjoy their vacation each year in almost every corner of the world. They are leaders in our industry who are here today to share their vision of what the future holds for you as travel professionals and what to expect from your customers and clients. Our moderator for today's keynote is renowned veteran journalist and editor James Shillinglaw, who for years has been the editor of some of the leading travel industry magazines, including Travel Pulse, Vacation Agent, Agent at Home, Travel Agent, Travel Market Report, and recently, the Insider Travel Report. He is also a 2-time recipient of ASTA's Travel Journalist of the Year. Jeremy? Our keynote panel includes Ninan Chacko, Chief Executive Officer of the Travel Leaders Group, Alex Zozaya, Chief Executive Officer of Apple Leisure Group, Andrew Stuart, President and Chief Executive Officer of Norwegian Cruise Line, Guy Young, Global Brand Engagement Officer, the Travel Corporation, and Jennifer Tombaugh, President of Tauck. Please join me in welcoming James Shillinglaw and our keynote panel to discuss the state of the travel industry.
Hello, how are you? Everybody's filling in, it's great. Everybody's after lunch. This has been a great show so far. This morning we had some great panels. Now I've done this panel a few times over the years, and every time it's a different mix. And we got some great folks here. We have a couple repeats from last year. But I wanted to really start it out because, as always, everybody wants to know how's business doing this year, and what does it look like for the rest of the year. Let's start with Ninan. How are your agents doing?
So first and foremost, thank you for having me back here, James. It's great to be here in this audience. So business largely good. The economy seems to be on a very positive trend and momentum. I think confidence is high. I think consensus estimates sort of peg the economy growing at about 2.5%. I think more specifically the travel business, I think we're seeing really healthy trends in terms of demand profiles growing. Obviously, in particular parts of the world, Europe, Africa, Southeast Asia, certainly parts of Latin America, showing really strong signs together with a really robust domestic environment also. So I think on behalf of the 40,000 or so agents that we represent, travel agents that we represent at Travel Leaders Group, I think 2018 is shaping up to be really a phenomenal year, perhaps one of the best that we'll see.
Sounds good. Alex, where do you see on the tour and also resort side?
Yeah, well, it really depends on the certain parts of the world. In general, I totally agree. I think 2018 is going to be another record year of people moving from one country to another country, more passports issued in the US, more people leaving the country for the first time. And we see a big growth. We saw last year of the top 20 countries in tourism in the world, big growth, as high as 22%, for example, Australia, the United Kingdom, Spain. The only 2 countries on the top 20 20 countries in the world that did not grow, actually shrank, was one, United States, and that go anywhere in between 4 to 6% overall, number of visitors coming in the US. But when you take the long haul passengers coming from longer distance to the US, it shrank 12%, so that's significant. and the other one is Turkey, unfortunately, that shrunk about 6%. But all of the other 18 countries on the top 20 grew substantially. Why is the United States shrinking? That's a different question.
Well, that's coming up. That's coming up.
That's coming up. But in general, tourism overall is doing well. And in our region, in our space where we move, Mexico and the Caribbean, despite some headwinds, we grew in 2017, and we see a good 18 with some headwinds, but we see overall a good year coming in front of us.
Okay, and Jennifer, from the tourist perspective,
I'm going to continue the momentum here. We have river, small ship, and land programs that run in all 7 continents, 70 countries, and we are seeing robust growth. I mean, 17 was a banner year, and 18 is right now our largest advanced booking year we have ever had in the 93-year history of our company. So it's pretty exciting to see that come back, specifically places in South America where we had some Zika issues from the past. And Europe was still soft in Central Europe last year. That's all rebounding, as is Italy, big time. Africa in particular is on fire. That's booking very, very strong, as is the Middle East. Israel in particular is up 60% for us for 18. And even we're seeing actually on the guided space in the United States, growth is still strong, which was surprising, frankly, because we'd had such a strong year in the national parks last year. But we just wish there was more lodging, well, one in Canada with our neighbors to the north in the Canadian Rockies. But even going into 18, business into the national parks is very, very strong. And so our U.S. business is up overall.
Yeah. And Guy, you have a wide mix of tour operators and even some lodging companies and a river cruise. What does it look like for the Travel Corporation?
I mean, more of the same, what my panelists said. I mean, it looks like it's going to be a fantastic year in 2018. Certainly it will be the best year on record if things continue the way they are. And, we have 30 brands in our portfolio, and we range from, youth brands to sort of contemporary brands all the way up to luxury brands. And we have destinations all around the world. And the amazing thing is that every single destination is up, with the exception of the US. But more importantly,
what's wrong with us? This is crazy.
We'll find out, right? Yeah.
We'll talk. That's the next question. Yeah.
But the great thing is, in a given year, we usually have some brands are up, some that are down. But in this case, across the board, every single brand is up in 2018. So it looks like it's going to be a phenomenal year for us.
And we'll close with cruise. What's it looking like?
Well, good afternoon. I like to be contrary, but I can't be on this question. Business is.
You can try if you like.
No, business is really good. Last quarter we announced earnings was the third quarter of 17, and it was a record quarter for us. And we see the demand that drove that pushing out into 2018. We see an earlier booking curve. And for those booking travel, I think that's an important change in how you think about your businesses. Is simply booking much earlier. So getting ahead and pushing product out to people further out than we have, I think is going to be really important for success, because there's going to be less inventory close in. There's going to be more early, and we just see that trend continuing. So every destination looks strong. In 2016, we saw the U.S. consumer to Europe take a little bit of a dip. That came roaring back in 17. Looks strong again in 18. So yeah, we feel very optimistic.
Okay. Well, let me ask our travel agents in the audience. Raise your hand if business is looking really good for this year. Okay.
Yeah.
I think we have an endorsement there.
And James, just as a quick final note, just echoing, I think, everything that my colleague said. For us, one of the core initiatives for us in 2018, really based on this optimism, is for us, we're celebrating 2018 as the year of the travel agent. So I think
you have your button there. And
I do.
You have your buttons there.
Got some extras for my colleagues here. So. Very much, I think, playing off of this momentum and optimism for really what we see in 2018, notwithstanding some of the downwinds that Alejandro mentioned.
Well, congratulations, and hopefully everyone will keep on celebrating for the rest of the year on this. I do want to talk about, the reasons why we are seeing such a great year, but also talk a little bit about what the effect of the current administration has been on travel, in your view, because that has been the downturn I think, for the U.S., and it's something the U.S. travel industry, the U.S. Travel Industry Association, has been really worried about, and has formed a coalition already to try to bring that travel back. And a lot of us here are focused on outbound tourism, so we're not quite as, although, obviously we want to be traveling in the U.S. as well. But what do you think, and I'll bring this open, what has been the effect of the current administration on travel?
I think, without a doubt, dampening of that demand. Just to go back to Alejandro's point, I think when I saw the data, first 7 months of last year, about a 4% decrease, $4.5 billion in terms of impact to our economy, 40,000 jobs. So with all the focus on the domestic economy, as much as maybe the majority of our businesses aren't impacted by inbound, absolutely has an impact on the economy, absolutely has an impact on the image and identity of the United States and of the American traveler. And I think the last piece of data that I saw that was really concerning was, I think the UN WTO had reported that Spain was about to bump the United States off of the second most visited country in the world, which really is, unfortunately embarrassing.
Well, I'm sure the Spain tourism folks, if they're in the audience, are happy about that. But yeah, I mean, it is interesting because the stock market is booming no matter what happens, and that would bode well for U.S. tourism abroad, but maybe not people coming here. Alex, I know you have some opinions on this.
Yes, I do. Actually, it's not just the current administration. There's other factors. The change from 16 to 17 was also attributed to the strong U.S. dollar, and for that period of time. Not the case in 17. In 17, the change from 16 to 17, actually some of these foreign currencies like the euro have appreciated against the U.S. dollar. Even the Mexican peso has appreciated against the U.S. dollar. So the exchange rate, it's not a reason of what happened in the last 12 months. Okay. Certainly, travel ban, the rhetoric of President Trump, the actual restrictions, the visa situation. But I have to say, brand USA is hurt. The brand is hurt. So right now, a lot of associations and conglomerations of travels in the United States, including hotel companies and tourism services, are getting together to try to come up with campaigns like everybody's welcome, like the U.S. is open for everybody. But I have to say, the brand USA in the foreign, because of the rhetoric and the language and the things that we've been hearing from the president, has affected the desire and from some countries to come, and in some cases it's just simply people don't want to deal with a hassle, and so obviously that's taken a toll on what's happening.
Although I got to say, when you walk out into Times Square, you wouldn't know that people are not coming to the U.S. because I don't think I hear an American voice in there. It's amazing.
No, of course, the number of tourists is still huge. The United States was traditionally number one in terms of revenues and number two in terms of international passengers for many, many years. Number two after France, and number three was Spain. As Ninan said, Spain grew 20%, and the United States declined anywhere in between 4 to 6 overall, so now went to number 3, which is not so bad either. But certainly there's tremendous potential because the supply has grown, and that's also very important. The supply has grown. Domestic travel in the U.S. is doing very well.
Okay. Well, I don't think Mr. Trump would like walking around saying we're number 3. So that's
or the cause of job loss, right?
Yeah.
Or the job loss, right? Yeah. Anybody else want to react to that in terms of?
Certainly there's no doubt that some of the rhetoric is having an impact on tourism. I mean, the one statistic that I thought was very interesting is that arrivals from the Middle East, even though it's a very small number, are down over 30% to the US, and that's obviously a direct effect of Trump's rhetoric and some of the policies. But what I think somebody mentioned on the panel is that we as an industry have to do more to promote tourism to the United States. And it was very interesting. I was at a presentation 2 weeks ago about Tourism Ireland. They've seen 70% growth from US travelers to Ireland in the last 2 years. But they're still out there marketing the destination. They've got a great plan in place. They're talking to the media. They're talking to their fellow tour operators. And, that's the kind of thing we need in the US. And I'm glad to hear that there are some trade associations that are putting together a plan to try to...
No, they're definitely. No, in fact, we have a video interview with the head of Irish tourism on our website today. And they've done an amazing job. And it just keeps growing. It's a very small amount of numbers, but it's amazing.
Right. So we can certainly do more, and obviously the currency, hopefully, as the euro appreciates, we'll start seeing more inbound tourism. But we really need to do more as an industry to promote the USA as a great, wonderful destination.
Okay. Any other? Okay. Let's talk specifically about destinations abroad. What destinations are you really seeing some great traffic where they really are booming? I mean, what are the most popular destinations for your companies today?
I mentioned earlier.
You said Africa.
Israel is up 60%.
Israel too.
Africa is on fire. Australia and New Zealand has been extremely strong for us. But it's been really wonderful to see Europe come back so aggressive and strong as well. Italy, we're seeing record numbers out of the gate going into 18.
Always. I mean, Italy continues to do.
We always talked about the I's, Iceland, the Iberian Peninsula, Italy, and
you can add Ireland too.
And Ireland, right? All holds true. And so that's been wonderful to see. But also, again, as I mentioned, Central Europe, especially after 16, as was mentioned before, some of the softness there, that rebound is happening as well.
Okay.
Andy? I would echo that. Europe's tremendously strong. It's come back incredibly strong since 16. 17 was strong, and 18 looks potentially stronger. Alaska for us.
Alaska, it seems like the entire cruise industry has moved up into Alaska this year. I mean, you are already there, but there's much more, a lot more cabins.
It's interesting because Alaska is a destination where there hasn't been a lot of new capacity. And so we're one of the first brands to add capacity. The only way you can add capacity is to take a small ship out and put a big one in, because there aren't enough berths to add ships into the market. So the capacity increase you're really seeing is mid-sized ships going to bigger ships. And so we did that. We added a larger ship. And we've never seen a new ship have as strong a reception as Norwegian Bliss has had in Alaska. So Alaska looks like a very strong market.
Well, you started, a Norwegian Bliss, first ship I know that it started in Alaska in that way.
Well, yeah, I mean, we started sailing out of Seattle to Alaska. That was the big innovation back in 2001, which has now most of the round trip Alaska industry sails out of Seattle. So yeah, Alaska looks incredibly strong. Cuba, interestingly enough.
We'll talk about Cuba. Let's talk about Cuba a bit.
I'm allowed to talk about it now?
You are.
Okay.
Well, we don't have to stick to the script. It's okay.
So, Cuba opened up for the cruise industry last year. And I've never seen a new destination take off the way Cuba took off. So we have weekly sailings to Cuba. It's been incredibly successful. We added a second ship.
Despite the policies, the harsher policies, although cruising may be one of the ways, except tours, to go, right?
Well, it's interesting. There's clearly a lot of confusion about Cuba, given some of the conversations that took place, some of the back and forth on legislation and the change that took place, where individuals were no longer covered under the people to people, and had to go back to groups. And so ultimately, I think that helps the cruise proposition for Cuba, because all of our shore excursions are covered under the group people to people element. So we're seeing it come back after a little bit of confusion, a little bit of people trying to understand it. I think the fact that we're still going, we've added capacity, is telling the story that this is a fantastic way to visit this destination for which there is huge pent-up demand. So we're excited about it. It's a lot. We've doubled the capacity essentially.
Well, and so have your competitors. I think they're.
And we have the two largest ships that physically can sail into Havana Harbor with Norwegian Sky and Norwegian Sun. So. We're excited about it, but clearly we have to get the word out that you can still go.
Sure.
And but we see it as a great opportunity for the industry.
Yeah. What about the tour? So Jennifer and Guy and Alex, you all have programs there.
I would build on that. We actually have 3 programs: a cruising program with our wonderful partners at Pinel, and then 2 land programs. We actually have seen some softness, and I think the confusion, that word is absolutely the right one. We hear lots of chatter about, is it safe? Am I going to get blasted by a sonar gun? Is it, what is the stand on this? Can I go as an individual? Can I not? And even some of the clarifications we've gotten out of OFAC recently have sent a lot of mixed and confusing messages. So the hope that we continue to see, like you, very strong demand on our cruising space in particular, and I think maybe that's perceived as maybe a little bit safer in some way, but it was really, really surprising, because even after the the world opened for independent travelers to go to Cuba, Americans, we still saw great growth for guided experiences. And then it's just been the rhetoric in the last few months that have, I think, put people on pause. I think it will come back. I think it will come back hugely. In fact, I know there's a whole, I'm heading down to Havana on Sunday because of a media focus to try and reverse some of this unfortunate image that's plaguing the island.
Yeah. And Alex, what?
Yeah, Cuba's having a tough time now. I mean, it was a booming. I agree. It was a huge growth from the previous year all the way, like from 15 to 16. That was a huge jump. 16 was okay. 17 was a big drop, and a big drop on the land side. We have number one, the hurricanes hitting on the north, on the Keys particular. So a lot of inventory is out of place right now. So there's a lot less tourists now. Actually, for example, Canada, that was very strong in Cuba, is now having a tough time with the inventory in Cuba, now shifting that demand to other places in the Caribbean. That explains some of the booming in Jamaica, Dominican Republic, etc. But they were hit badly in Havana. In Havana, basically by the current administration policies and rhetoric as well. So what we see is, I was just in Spain last week talking to the guys who control pretty much all of the inventory in Cuba and Havana, as well as on the Keys, and they're suffering on the beach resorts because of the lack of inventory and therefore the lack of connectivity. They cancel a lot of charters and stuff like that. But they're also suffering in Havana because the occupancy dropped when the Americans stopped coming, at least stopped coming in the numbers that they had before. Now they're trying to replace that tourism with other countries, but they also grew in supply. So right now it's a very difficult moment for Cuba. I agree that I think it's going to come back naturally. I'm not sure when, because it has to do a lot with the policies of the.
Well, it's also the investment is not going in as it looked like it was going to be open up and everybody,
kind of
Americans.
Like they were prepared to really continue to have that trend, and all of a sudden ceased, and now they have that momentum lost, and they're kind of like having a tough time for the moment. But I think and I hope that it's going to come back.
Guy, a question?
Well, I was hoping you weren't going to ask me, because we did actually launch a tour to Cuba for 2018, but we actually withdrew it. Yeah, we did withdraw the tour. So currently we don't have any tours to Cuba at the moment. So I was hoping you wouldn't ask me the question.
You're not a good. Well, next year. Instead. And Ninan, are you seeing from your agents? Are they looking to book Cuba? Or are they
certainly fielding? I think a lot of queries, James. I mean, akin to essentially what Jennifer said. I think there's a fair amount of confusion around what the situation is and what's permissible and what's not. So I think, anytime you put friction into the buying process, people have choices available to them. And that's the good part about our industry. There's other places they can go. So I think, unfortunately, it's sort of ended up dealing a pretty substantial blow to, I think, what could have been the trajectory for tourism, certainly in Cuba. And then, of course, Alejandro touched on it, but I think in some ways analogous to the situation also with the hurricanes in the Caribbean over.
Well, I wanted to get to that, and that'll be the next one. We're going to
so, I mean, just to that point, certainly I think, given that sometimes I think travelers are a little challenged in terms of the geography of the region, I think, unfortunately, the Caribbean kind of suffered a broader impact in terms of all of the press attention and focus. And it turned out that it was really only about 15 to 20% of the islands that were really impacted, right?
But so, I think one of the things that happened, though, is that the industry really rallied.
It did.
To tell the public that this was a limited number of islands. And Andy, I got to put a nod to you, because you guys were in the thick of it, and your ships were helping out the whole Caribbean during this. But that was a huge effort by the cruise industry, I know, to tell people that the Caribbean is open for business.
I thought it was one of the best examples I've seen of the industry forgetting that we compete and getting together immediately to figure out how to help. And the whole industry, I thought, did a great job sending ships down. We evacuated people from St. Thomas, and the stories from those people were really quite shocking. So the industry all got together and reacted immediately, pulled people out, but then did a very good job in telling the story. Hey, listen, the Caribbean's open, and adjusting itineraries such that vacationers had a fantastic experience immediately in the aftermath of the storm and thereafter. And so what we saw a 6-week period where there was weakened demand, mostly in the Eastern Caribbean, and it really was concentrated to the region that was most seriously affected by the storms. But after 6 weeks, demand really came back, and it showed the resilience, I think, of the industry.
So is it completely back now, or what do you think?
Caribbean is largely back, with the exception of if you're still running an itinerary that has an island that hasn't fully recovered, for example, Tortola, or which very sadly is still dealing with the significant impact from the storm. I think travelers recognize the specificity of that and react to that.
What about St. Martin and things like that?
Coming back, but
Puerto Rico, of course, we can't.
yeah, but ships. We had ships turn in Puerto Rico after the storm, and they were full. All of the ships turned. I think the first one turned. It was somewhere in the region of the 14th of November, and the ship was full and did well. So I think the industry did a great job to react. The story that was told by travel agents to consumers that the Caribbean's open and ships are sailing and it's okay to go back was fantastic. So I think the industry got together, and I also think there's been a great effort among the industry to raise money to help destinations that have been affected. So we've raised $1.25 million and we matched it. So we've got $2.5 million going down into restarting schools. Because you met people coming off the ship who were bringing their kids to the US to go to school because schools had been destroyed, and not everyone has the resources to do that. So we focused on education as our rebuilding effort. So there's a little bit of rebuilding, there's a lot of new efforts, there's still a communication job, but very resilient, and business came back.
And Alex, I wanted to get you from the land side, because you have a lot of travel down there. What did you see and come back?
Yeah, and the land, obviously, it's a lot slower. The recovery in places like Puerto Rico is still way behind, and St. Martin still behind, St. Thomas still behind, because obviously it takes longer time to recover. That being said, there are other places that are booming as a result of that. Dominican Republic, for example, is...
Well, they didn't get hit, and you have a lot of resorts down there.
Yeah, they were not hit, and the pace is big. We also had a little bit of a benefit rebound from the travel warnings, which is another whole topic that we should discuss.
Well, we should. We'll get to that.
And but we also had a benefit coming from the divert business going from other islands with our inventory to other regions. I think overall it's coming back, and I think for those destinations like Puerto Rico, like St. Thomas, like St. Martin that were really hit, I think now there are destinations that even on the land side they're enjoyable, they're open for business, and I think we should all support them because they need us. And I think our job as a travel community is not just to do the business, but to do what is right. And if we have a chance to cooperate somehow, I think it's better than sending probably a small donation. It's better to keep recommending and speaking about it and send your passengers there, because those destinations need the jobs, they need the tourism.
That's right.
Yeah, and that was in essence our message when we were busy educating agents, I think, just to echo.
You did the same. You did a very good job.
The One Caribbean Family Ambassador was just really talking about how we could make the biggest impact possible. And it really wasn't about sending a donation. It was really about saying tourism is the lifeblood of most of these economies on the islands. Yeah. And the single best thing we could do is to ensure that we get that industry back in order, get demand flowing back to those islands, and actually do the best job we can in terms of publicizing as accurately as possible what's open, what's under construction, and what's available and fully available for business, where customers could have an experience that matched or exceeded their expectations.
Right. Well, you mentioned Mexico, Alex, and the travel warnings, and now we actually have a whole new set of travel. I'm still adjust tiers. Yes, tiers of travel warnings, and I think it was confusing to start with. It may be more confusing now. And one of the destinations that I think has been hit a little bit by that is Mexico.
Yeah, well, Mexico, unfortunately, it was hit badly in August under the previous warning system.
Right. Is it better now?
It's much better now, particularly to the most important destinations, Los Cabos in Baja California Sur, as well as Quintana Roo, where Cancun, Riviera Maya, Cozumel, which is by far the highest concentration of tourists in Mexico. So that was badly hurt in August. Under the new warning that they came up, it came at from level 1 being the softest, 4 being the strongest, came out at level 2, which is the same level that England has, like particularly London or Paris. And by the way, we lose sight that the United States has in many cities, like Orlando, like Las Vegas, like Chicago, like New Orleans, stronger warnings. So in other countries.
From other countries, yeah,
From
that's
other
right.
countries.
Yeah,
So
we,
Canada,
we
the
tend
UK,
to
France.
ignore
So
that every other country has travel warnings on us.
Yeah, so it's ironic. Like, I have some friends that they call me and they live in Chicago, and they said, we were thinking about moving from Mexico to Dominican Republic. Do you think it's safe because of this travel warning? And I said, well, where do you live? I live in Chicago. I said, would you go out for dinner? Would you go out to go to the theater tonight? Would you go to the museum? Oh, of course I would. I said, well, let me tell you something. We're at the same level. And when you talk of criminality, you're much higher. Yeah. So in terms of real safety, we had to put really things in perspective. So in that aspect, we're better, but it's all perception.
Right.
Again, now, unfortunately, the news, instead of focusing on these destinations like Cancun and Los Cabos and Riviera Maya being eased up and a much better level of travel warning, now they're focusing in other places like Guerrero and Sinaloa, where Mazatlan or Acapulco are, being as bad as Syria. That was, for example, one of the big. It is.
That's a stretch.
They're and they one from 4, they're in 4. So unfortunately, the news been focusing on the negative side, negative aspect, because negative sells more than in the positive aspect. And then places like Dominican Republic or Jamaica, who they always had the same level. The level has not moved. People didn't know they had a warning. Now they all know. So talking about warnings now is like a trendy topic.
Yeah.
I don't know if one of the reasons behind is to promote domestic travelers.
I don't think so.
But for whatever reason, I think we should really put things in perspective. Talking about safety and talking about Cuba, for example. Cuba is one of the safest destinations in the world.
Yeah. Minus the sonic attacks, but other than that.
No, including the sonic attack.
I will say, I think over time, the new travel warning alert system is going to be very, very beneficial. I know we have a global response team, as everyone does, that really monitors events that come through. And before, you would get lots of questions on the phones. What's the difference between a warning and alert? And now to have that, not only the various tiers, but the more specificity as to why, that really didn't exist before, or as clearly as it did before. And so I think there'll be some noise, because there always is anytime you roll out something new, and maybe a little bit of confusion. But I think over time, it will actually help the American traveler.
Well, I hope so, because I thought the old system was very complicated. I'm still adjusting to the new system. But I wonder how Americans are feeling, if they even look at these warnings. And I guess one of my questions here is, despite all these warnings, are American travelers now more resilient? Are they kind of, doesn't matter what things are happening in terms of storms, political upheavals, are they getting to be more like European travelers, and they're going to go regardless? I mean, Guy, what do you think?
No, absolutely. I mean, the short answer is yes. And when we had those events in London last summer, I mean, within 48 hours, we're back to normal booking patterns. Yeah. But I think it does depend a little bit on the degree of the act of terrorism. It also depends a little bit on how the country responds to it, how their PR machine goes into effect, how the security measures are put up. But certainly we saw a much longer recovery time in Paris, for example, but it was a coordinated multiple attack. And I don't think the French government did as good a job as the English government in terms of recovering from the event. So I think it really depends on the situation. Also, when you look at the UK, yes, our business recovered in 48 hours, but the US dollar relative to the pound has been very strong, so people are traveling to London in droves. So I think you have to look at it in a sort of a more broader perspective. Mm-hmm. But certainly, I think,
Yeah, if I got a sale in London, I'm still going no matter what, right?
Exactly. So I really think you have to look at it in a broad perspective. But yes, absolutely, we're seeing the recovery trends come down to a much shorter period, and that's obviously great for all of us.
Okay, any other reaction in terms of resilience?
I would say we had a similar conversation this morning, and resilience with a capital R, absolutely. We do a lot of scenario planning of what happens if, whatever disaster, pick it of the day is going to happen. And before, when we've experienced those, we saw recovery periods of 12 months. When you think back, about 10 years ago, it was sort of 12 months. And then you started seeing 9 months, and then 6, and then 3, and then you have 48 hours. And I won't say it's not always like that, certainly, as we talk about Cuba or we talk about some of these areas. But I think that with all of the noise out there, and this is a group of a lot of media folks, it's really hard to know what's real. And I think people are turning that noise out. and saying, we're going to go. The market's doing well. All my savings are performing very nicely. All my funds are, and I can't wait. There's so many shoes that are dropping constantly that people are just getting up and going. And I do think there's a new normal out there. I think uncertainty is completely being redefined, and the traveler is saying, we're going to go. We're going to go.
The news cycle's shorter too, right?
Yeah.
Big things happen.
That's true.
And it's over in an hour.
Well, it's not only shorter, but it gets diverted very quickly.
Yes.
Well, that's
so
what I
that
mean.
it's
A big
something else.
story is
Every day.
over in an hour because something else crazy's happened, or someone may have said something that changed the news cycle.
Right.
I just want to add that the more sophisticated the traveler is, the more likely he is to come back, the more resilient it is. So it's all about informing and the travel agent. I think that's a very important role from the travel agents to the consumer, because those who don't know, those who are traveling out of the country for the first time, they're more likely to wait and say, well, I don't know, I'd rather wait. I want to go, but maybe it's not the right time. Those who already went out of the country, particularly those who went to that destination, are more likely to come back faster. But I think it's a very important role from the travel agents to really communicate, inform, and educate the passengers or the customers on this issue, so those who are traveling for the first time or their less adventures have confidence that they're going to be fine.
Well, and it's a great reason to use a travel agent, as we all know, that you do get that, it is safe, you can go, and why not? The old days, you get the calls. You still get the calls, I'm sure, saying, no, book me away from this region. Right. But I think, is it less?
No, and I think, obviously, especially given that our agents are really in a position to be well educated on these issues, we communicate, the industry communicates, supplier partners communicate, et cetera. They're really in an ideal position to, I think, address the concerns of friction that would-be travelers would have. And in those cases where it represents a concern that can't otherwise be alleviated, so I'm thinking back to all of the surveys we did around the time of Zika, obviously there were specific demographic sets, expectant mothers, et cetera, where clearly they were in a position to provide advice about alternative destinations, which they did. So I think for us, the most impressive part about all of this was the resilience of travelers to continue proceeding with their plans. And if there was absolutely a defined, logical, rational reason not to go, there were lots of alternatives for them to pursue.
Well, it's interesting because this morning I was coming into the conference and I heard on the radio that Zika is back in Florida, and I'm like, wait a minute, that was last year's story. Is it really true? I mean, and nobody's focusing on it. It's like maybe there are too many other things to worry about.
Well, I think it goes back to Andy's point about what's in the news cycle every morning.
Yeah.
And don't ask.
Don't ask. But for the time, it was all Zika, all 24/7, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
And now the little story here, and you don't see it again. Right. Let me shift gears a little bit because there is another topic, and we talked about this last year in last year's panel. It's the impact of technology on travel, and it's a huge story. We could probably do a whole panel on that. But what is the impact of all these new technologies? Things like artificial intelligence, especially obviously with our travel agent audience here, things like that. Do you think that these new technologies really have the potential to deliver a better travel experience for customers, or are they going to divert business away from travel agents? Ninan, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so James, absolutely. I mean, obviously, we are passionate, firm believers in a travel agent being at the center of this transaction, right? I mean, 3 simple reasons for me why travel agents, obviously 2018 being for us this year of the travel agent, and why they'll continue to prosper and grow. While there are many reasons, the 3 that sort of stand out in my mind are fundamentally their ability to understand their customer and to design a specific experience that works for that customer. So in sort of IT parlance, you would say that's CRM, but really there's no better person, or there's no better technology that can really supplant what an agent can do in that regard. The second one is really being, we talked about natural disasters, we talked about Zika, et cetera, but while the start of this year and last year saw a lot of natural disasters, it's also the time that our agents shine, because for all those other folks who are dealing with being in a call queue with X airline or X online agency, they're able to pick up their phone, call their agent, and have an alternative plan, or even proactively for that agent to reach out to essentially ensure their travelers is accommodated. And then the third one that always stands out in my mind is their ability to access exclusive benefits. There's always this misnomer that somehow when you deal with a travel agent, you're somehow getting a higher price, or it's not as competitive.
Or it costs more.
That's right. Yeah. And the alternative is actually, or the counterpoint to that is really, first and foremost, certainly competitive, if not better on price, but really access to a whole bunch of exclusive benefits. So when I think of that embedded in the construct of what technology can do, I think technology can aid a lot, particularly in communication. Right? In terms of the ease with which all of us want to access services, whether it's by text or WhatsApp or click to call, whatever else it might be. So I think being able to put that agent in the center of all of that to make that experience even more effective, even easier to use in the way that the traveler wants to correspond, communicate.
Right. Well,
with
you
them.
have to be there in all ways.
That's right.
And it does go to the point where people seem to think it's a zero-sum game of
Either
technology
or
agents.
Not at all.
And actually, to be honest with you, technology has been enabling agents for quite some time.
It has been, and I think the great example for me that always stands out is we're in an environment where information is unlimited on travel, right? And when you think about it, the average person is hitting, 20 websites before they come to one or make a decision, et cetera. Really, part of, I think, the ease, convenience, and utility is relying on somebody to help interpret that for
Absolutely.
you. Somebody who knows you, trusts you, and can kind of optimize your time.
Yeah.
So that's really where I see kind of technology at the nexus of all of this.
So Jennifer, you?
I would totally agree with that. I think technology makes the travel agent more important than ever. We were on a panel for USTOA's Digital Academy just this week,
right.
And there was a great speaker from Google who talked about there are 400 different touch points that the average consumer makes online before they make their travel decision. That's overwhelming. Just think of your own behavior and habits of trying to just gather information, and it's just overwhelming. And so as our amazing travel agent partners do, they find what's really meaningful out of that. It's sort of like getting whether you're making a financial investment or you're worrying about your health, you want to go to an expert who's going to decipher all this out there and make sense of what's the right thing for you.
Well, in fact, the woman from Google, everybody think it's going to be the Googleization of travel is going to eliminate the agent entirely. And I think the Google travel head, we've actually had some of those Google travel heads here. They keep changing. I don't, it's like different people all the time, but they said it's not a zero. It's we are there to help you as well.
I will also just say we talk a lot about technology and digital because it's fashionable, and it is. It's important to what we do every day. But we're in the business of people.
That's
right? This is all about human interaction, and at the end of the day, hospitality. What you remember about a destination, you go for the place, but it's the people and it's the story that you remember, right? And we all have those experiences, and we can never ever lose sight of that engagement that happens as you're preparing to go in and you're there, because at the end of the day, that's why we're all here, right? It's the people in this industry and that how we stay connected that really makes a difference.
Any other comments on the impact of technology?
I'll take a different. Think about the onboard experience. I think we have the opportunity to use technology to really enhance the experience on board the ships, and we're being very careful because the idea of having 4,000 people walking around looking at a phone is the absolute last thing we want to do. We want people to put that away. But there is an opportunity to enable the experience.
And every line today is doing this. It's the digitization of the cruise experience.
So we're being very thoughtful in how we do that, because I do think there's a risk you end up with everybody with their mobile phone in their hand for a 7-day vacation. We think that's a disaster. So we're really not trying to do that. But we are trying to give people the opportunity to customize their vacation through technology that will allow them to have the vacation on their own terms and make that easier, make the planning of that easier through technology. We're also able to put experiences on the ships that we wouldn't have been able to do, the racetrack, for example, with electric cars. That we wouldn't have been able to do. You couldn't have gasoline cars on a ship. Now there's electric cars that allow you to put a cool experience on top of the ship. Some of the virtual reality experiences that we can put into the experience as part of the experience, we think enhances the guest experience. So I think there are lots of applications for technology. You do have to be careful you don't.
Well, and I know they're trying to take, and this is the whole idea of artificial intelligence, I think they're trying to take certain aspects that can be machined, if you will, but there's a limit to, in my view, like, sometimes I just want to call a person to come and do something for me, not have to figure out what on my app I need, right?
Well, it's funny, I went to, we were looking at some stuff in New York, and I went to look at the Yotel. I was just curious because I'd heard about this automated experience, and you don't need to see anyone to check in. You don't need to see anyone there's a robot that takes your bag. There's screens that you check in with. So I just went to look at it. I was curious. And I walked in, and I don't know if anyone's been there, the ground floor is all automated check-in stations, and then there's this robot. There was nobody there. There was not a soul there. The robot wasn't moving. There was no one on the screens. So I went up to the first floor.
There are no customers. There are no guests.
No, the place was busy. Really? On the first floor. There was a line of people trying to see a person because nothing was working on the ground floor. So I thought it was a lesson.
There's nobody from your hotel.
It was the longest line of any hotel I looked at that day, and I looked at a bunch just to look at what's going on in hotels. And the only place I saw a long line was the one that was supposedly the high tech and everything's going to be smooth, use technology. So you've got to be careful. You've got to have this right mix between enabling but connecting with people. And so I think you've got to be cautious how we use technology. Use it wisely.
Yeah, Guy?
I mean, technology is obviously great for enabling a better guest experience and working with our travel agent partners. But I always love telling the story about Mrs. Tolman, who's the founder and president of Red Carnation Hotels, which is in our group at 17 five-star properties around Europe, South Africa, and there's one in Palm Beach, Florida. And still today, she's in her 80s, and she really built the company. It's really a phenomenal brand. If you go and you Google you do a TripAdvisor search for the best hotels in London, the top 3 hotels are Red Carnation Hotels. It's a phenomenal brand. But still today, every night she receives a fax from all the general managers with the high-level sales numbers, any customer service issues that might have happened at the property in a given day. And she, the next day, is on the phone talking to the general managers, trying to figure out how to resolve the problems. She will personally pick up the phone and call guests if they had a less than satisfactory stay. And I think, that type of old-fashioned hospitality, even in this age of technology, is just so important and has to be a key to a successful company, especially some of our niche, high-touch luxury brands. Yeah. I really think that's very important.
Yeah, and I know, and Alex, when you go to one of your AM resorts, they greet you at the door, they take you to the, there's not really a lot of technology involved. It's a lot of...
No, there is technology, but it never replaces the people. I think what Jennifer mentioned is absolutely key, particularly when you're on holidays. You want to interact with people, and that's part of the great service of this industry, is the people serving people. I just have to say that the technology is so important that every time our technology fails, when we have technology glitches, which happens more often than I would like to, we lose a ton of sales and a ton of customers. So obviously it's very, very important.
No, absolutely. Let's turn to, we talked a little bit about what's happening, the impact of technology and things on travel agents. Do you see any changes in the distribution system for the future, major ones? Are you going to continue? It's hard to say that in front of a whole huge, you're not going to say, we're not going to use travel agents anymore. But I get a sense that it's actually the tide is turning the other way.
Yeah.
Jennifer, what from your perspective?
We have had despite all of the threats that the travel agent is going away and the death knell, quite the opposite. What we see is a lot more sophisticated. You all are here. This incredibly sophisticated group of travel agents who can, again, tailor the right program because they have a deeper understanding of who the customer is. And so, as we've seen disintermediation with OTAs or just more home-based agents, we have to change the way that we communicate with the travel agent community, but I don't see that changing at all.
No, certainly the structure has changed, and I've been watching this. I created a whole magazine focused on home-based agents at one point, and now it's like an agent is an agent wherever they work, and I can't even say they're at home. They're usually on a cruise, but that's
right.
another, right? You guys
Yeah,
are
We like that.
But I
or a
think-
tour, or in a hotel inspecting. Yeah,
And I think the thing that's probably changed the most is the retail aspect of a storefront. And it's still prevalent in parts of the country. We have lots of agencies, particularly in the Midwest. But in a place like New York City, it would be less of the case. More home-based agents, more available on the phone. I think, contrary to everything that the Bureau of Labor Statistics continues to put out about the decline of number of full-time positions in the travel agency industry, that runs counter to our experience. In fact, I think the bulk of agents joining our business are either new to the industry, straight out of sort of school, looking for their first career, or in a lot of cases, second career folks. Either moms who've been stay-at-home moms, stay-at-home dads, or folks leaving their primary professions, whether they're lawyers, investment bankers. We've run the gamut, so it's been fascinating to see people look for an environment where they can pursue their passion, have the tools available to them, and actually connect with people to kind of design experiences that exceed their expectations. So fabulous from my perspective.
Well, I mean, I keep telling everybody, you guys are, you got the best jobs. You believe it or not, in their days you're not going to think that, but if you're good, you're selling something everybody likes.
Yep.
Your hours, if you're home-based or independent, is your hours, which are long, by the way, anytime you want, and you can travel as well as your clients sometimes because you have to go out and try the products. And by the way, you can earn six figures.
That's right. I mean, I suspect January 4th, in the middle of that whole JFK weekend debacle, wasn't the most pleasant time to be talking to your customers, but it's also where they earned essentially their accolades for being able to help their customers.
No, and there are going to be those glitches, but that's what you're there for. And if you had booked online with the
SOL.
airline,
Correct.
good luck.
That's
right. Absolutely.
Go ahead.
No,
Sorry.
somebody, either one of you.
We see the travel agency channel just getting stronger and stronger. So we've been working really hard to get away from price as I think the industry for a while, we got to price as the lead story, price, and we all know that only ends up with price going one way. And so we've been really pushing hard to get away from price, get to the experience, get to the value, get to a more inclusive experience. And the only way to tell that story is through the travel agency. You can't tell that story online. You need to be in front of somebody, talking to someone to talk about the experience. This is, for most people, the most important week of their life. And so the idea that price is the most important component of that is terrible. It shouldn't be.
But it still continues to be in many cases. People are going to look at a price and they say, and that's the biggest problem with agents have is.
I think that's why together we're more powerful, though. If we can together get away from price and talk about the experience that the consumer's going to have, the value they're going to derive from this most important week in the 52, then that's a recipe for success. This idea that is going to be price is a recipe for disaster. So we've really been pushing that. And we see that strengthening the travel agency distribution channel, and as a result, strengthening the industry.
Right. And Guy?
Yeah, I mean, for the Travel Corporation across our brands, travel agents account for 90% of our business. So we are really joined to the hip with travel agents. And we see that channel growing faster than any other channel, including our direct channel. So we certainly believe in the travel agency distribution model. Our products are, high-ticket items. There's obviously oftentimes a lot of different components. There's usually an international flight involved. So we really see the value of a travel agent, communicating that to the guest, and also explain the very high value that we deliver on our different products. But what's been fascinating, I'll pick up on what Nana said, is that the home-based agency market to me has been just phenomenal. And I met over the last couple of days with two heads of a big home-based agency and one a franchise agency. And what was fascinating about it, they bring in literally hundreds of new agents every year into the business. And the one host agency owner told me that 70% of the people they bring in are totally new to travel. So literally you have every year thousands of new agents coming into the business. Now, obviously they're not coming with a book of business. They might need to learn more about the industry, but they're all super enthusiastic. They have a love for travel. And how great is it for us as suppliers to have thousands of new agents every year promoting the industry, and over time will become very productive agents. I mean, we have home-based agents that on one brand alone are selling over $1 million in revenue. So, I mean, it's a fantastic channel, one we totally believe in.
Well, it's one of the things a few years ago, everybody was wondering where the travel agents of the future are going to come from, and that the industry was kind of dying out. And, and I was there back in the 90s when airlines cut commissions, and, it was you go to agent meetings and there were a lot of older people who were wondering, what's going to be the future and who's going to come in. But I think we've solved that issue.
Yeah.
And James, I think this plays back to a point also on when you talked about technology earlier, which is, I think we're now 20 years into, obviously, the internet, certainly in travel. And if you sort of think about its phenomenal success, because it's undoubtedly successful, part of the challenge is, certainly from a travel standpoint, the web's really phenomenally effective at finding you the lowest price on anything, whether it's a diamond, a bulldozer, or a cruise cabin. So part of the challenge with all of that is I think we've yet to get to the point where technology is able to, in a way that's seamless, discriminate and kind of match the right product to the consumer. And this is, again, where, to pick up on one of Andy's points, I think with this experiential shift in travel, I think we are at the point where people are starting to value their time and the memory that's created in the experience they have slowly, as much as kind of what the trigger price is for a particular product, because you really come away with something that you'll remember, as opposed to, I found a $99 fare to London or whatever else it might be.
And it's just one last point. It's complicated. I mean, if you as a travel agent just said, hey, all I'm going to do is support the five of us up here, it would be really complicated to understand the detail of what all of us do. And then you think about all the other brands and companies out there. It's very complicated. Our teams struggle to keep up with just where our ships are and what categories we have and how it all comes together. So imagine the consumer trying to navigate all of that. It's very complicated. So it's
even with the help of TripAdvisor.
Yeah, right.
Particularly with the help of TripAdvisor.
I'm going to shift gears quickly because we're almost out of time, but I did want to get to this because we only have one woman on the panel. Jennifer.
I wonder who's going to get this question.
There should be more. There should be more, and there will be more. Is there? What's the status of women in the workplace in the travel industry now? And I guess I'll ask you, and then is there still opportunity?
Yeah, I'm looking for a contrarian, really difficult question, guys. Look, I feel very blessed speaking from Tauck. I mean, half of our executive team, we're evenly divided between men and women, as is our senior levels. And so more than half of our employees are women. And I've had a mom of 4. I've had a tremendous support. I don't think that's true for everyone. It's an industry that's powered by women and largely led by men, but that's changing. And I think that's great. And well, it's not just great. It's not because it's the right thing to do, although I might argue that as well. It's because it's economically smart. And I think there's been study after study after study that's shown that having more women, just having more diversity, but having more women on boards in a management rank throughout any kind of organization leads to higher profitability and overall better guest satisfaction.
There you go.
And I can't really stress that enough. I mean, I think especially and the folks in this room know this, we all get into our groupthink, right? We like to surround ourselves with people like us because it's comfortable, right? And so I think that the more we just mix up all of our management ranks, particularly with women, because so much of women are the key decision makers in travel, because so many women are in the industry, I think will just lead to greater growth for all of us down the road.
Right.
I just want to add that certainly the travel industry it's an industry driven by women. I think that not only because of the amount of women that participate in the sector, whether it's in the travel agent community or in the hotel community and all that, but because, like in other industries, the women are making the decisions. I mean, honestly, when it comes to our business, in the vacation business, maybe 70-75% of the decisions are made by women. We address the marketing to women because I know as a wife or the girlfriend that is one on the side over the guy where to go. So I think it's smart to take that into consideration and address the fact that yes, this is an industry that is perfect for women, but we need more women in top positions. We don't have enough women in top positions. We added I think as women as CEOs, women as on the board directors of large corporations, and I see a lot more women stepping out, and I think it's going to happen. I see already happening in our board, for example. Now we have 2 women. We didn't have one before, but I see that coming on. We need more women in top positions, to make it a lot more, even to make it healthier and actually to make it stronger.
Absolutely, I totally agree.
Yeah, and I think younger folks today want to work in companies in environments where there are people who look like them in all aspects. I think customers want to deal with companies with people, again, who kind of represent that whole spectrum of the populace that's out there. So I think there are good, healthy business reasons, but to me, the point that Jennifer made, I think the diversity of viewpoints is really the strongest reason. I've got a bunch of colleagues here today who I think very much represent all of that. I think you were on a panel with Gail earlier today, so echo all of that.
Arnie, you?
Well, this is one of the few panels I sit on where I'm not the only guy, actually. I mean,
that's true.
On the cruise side.
I remember one panel you were the only guy. That was it.
Which I love those panels. It's a miserable panel for me. Because the cruise I think has been pretty good. The CEO of Carnival, CEO of Princess, CEO of Celebrity, former CEO of Crystal, we're all women, and that's one of the reasons the industry is doing as well as it is. And so I think it's a good thing. You're seeing more female captains. Which I think is a good thing. You're seeing more female hotel directors, so I think the cruise industry has been doing a good job in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not where it needs to be, but progress.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to have a female CEO next year instead of you.
Okay.
Because I said we got about 4 or 5 female.
Yeah, you have plenty. You have a lot. You have a lot to choose from.
But you're here, so that's okay.
Well, thank you for having me this year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, James.
Final question. What do you see? What's the biggest thing you see coming this year for travel, or maybe that we don't see, that you think will make a huge impact, Ninan?
So really just, I think, much more of a push into experiences that are authentic, that are local. I look at the things like the Visits of the world in terms of local dining, local tours, but being able to, I think, bring to life the essence of an experience of a destination and a city in ways that are much more easily consumable, bookable by travel agents, consumable by travelers.
Absolutely. Alex?
I think it will be rhetoric and policies, not just in the US, but the rest of the world. We see now a huge polarization in the world. We see more countries trying to be isolated, independent. We see what happened now in Catalonia, trying to get independent from Barcelona, from the rest of Spain. We see, the rhetoric here in the United States, what happened recently with Brexit. We see what was about to happen in France. So I think the nationalism rhetoric that we see could affect dramatically the international travel and the perception of safety and all that. So I see more like the political, geopolitical aspect could change. I think it's up to the leaders that we have today to really conduct the world to the right path. But I think that's what it could cause the bigger impact in terms of people flowing from one country to another.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Jennifer?
I think those are great points. I would also say that small is big, and I mean 3 things by that. We're seeing tremendous growth in small groups, that people want a more intimate experience, especially as some of these destinations become quite crowded, is how do you kind of get into that secret behind-the-scenes experience? And so that is a huge area of growth for us. Small ship cruising is huge, is big for us as well, because again, for us it's about the destination experience, and so getting into those places to have that more intimate experience. And then finally, I would say a lot of it is about thinking small. And what I mean by that is that people are demanding more personal attention, right? It's if you don't have someone address you by name or know a little bit about you in the hospitality space, it doesn't feel right anymore, right? If you've been a repeat traveler and they don't acknowledge that, you kind of don't feel as loyal as you used to. And so I think it's holding on all of us to just dial up the level of personalization and care that we're giving to each and every traveler.
Fantastic. Guy?
I mean, from our perspective, we have a huge investment in the guided vacation sector. And over the years, we've invested a lot in making it a more personalized experience, a more intimate experience. Ninan mentioned Visits. We have an exclusive partnership with them in Europe where we take our guests into it's in-home dining, kind of like the Airbnb of dining. So we've been really pleased with the resurgence in guided vacations because there was about 2-3 years where we were really plateauing and in fact the business was declining. And when I talk about how good the business is going into 2018, a lot of that's been driven by guided vacations. So I think...
Well, yeah, it's the term too. Remember, they used to be called tours.
Yeah, and it's not just the experience. It's also the way we're communicating the guided vacation experience. So we've really changed the nomenclature. We've really enhanced the experiences. We are making a lot more immersive. And from our perspective, it's great to see the resurgence in that sector because it really is fantastic value for your clients. And long may that continue. It's been very good for us going into 2018.
And Andy, I'll let you close it out. No pressure, though.
So I'll close on a positive. We started off with how's business, and I think you heard from everyone that business is maybe as good as it's ever been. So I think it's going to be a record year for, or it looks like every segment, which means you'll see investment from on the supplier side, which is a good thing. And I think it's a great opportunity on the travel agent side to invest, finding new customers. People want to travel, that's clear. So bringing new people into travel, having people travel more often than they were thinking about travel, all of those I think are just massive opportunities in a year that's going to be a record year in every segment. So if there ever was a time to invest, put some more dollars into marketing, figure out how to reach more customers, I think this is a year where you can safely say, I should put a little extra down in trying to find some new customers. So I'll close with this badge, which, this really should be the year of the travel agent. It's a superb opportunity to build your business, find new customers, and capitalize on a record year that will pay dividends year after year after year. So take advantage of a record year.
Fantastic.
Well said.
Well, you guys did a great job. It was great to be back here doing this panel. Thank you very much. Please give them another round of applause.